In this video, we're going to talk about the exams and what's required of both the midterm and the final exam. So there's going to be two different exams. They're going to be structured exactly the same. The only difference between the two is that they're going to cover different chapters from the Babbie textbook. The first midterm exam is going to cover 5 of the chapters covered in the first half of the semester. The final exam is going to cover an additional 5 chapters in the second half of the semester. The way that this works is that you'll see on Canvas that there's a thing called the exam study guide. If you go under the modules, you will look, and it's under the final exam. It's called Exam Study Guide. You can see a link to it here. That document actually is not just for the final exam, but the midterm and final exam questions are all available for you. So the way this works is that for every chapter you read, there are going to be 10 multiple choice reading questions. So for the first, not all 5 chapters that you have to read, but they are listed in that study guide. Each chapter, there are 10 questions. All 10 questions are multiple choice. So for 5 chapters you will read in the first half of the semester, there will be 50 total questions with 10 questions per chapter that are multiple choice. Those 50 questions comprise exactly the questions that you will be asked on the midterm exam. After the midterm exam, you will continue reading parts of the Babbie textbook. There are going to be 5 additional chapters that have associated reading questions that are on that study guide. You will use those 50 questions that are all multiple choice as the study guide to guide your reading for the second half of the semester. And then when we get to the final exam, you will be asked those 50 questions. So it's a 50-point midterm exam based off 50 questions from 5 chapters, 10 questions apiece. The final exam is going to cover 50 additional questions from 5 new chapters, 10 questions per chapter. They are all multiple choice. There will not be anything besides the multiple choice questions asked of you on either of these exams. And specifically, the questions that are going to be asked of you are exactly those questions in the study guide that is available on campus. Each question is worth 1 point. So obviously, every question you get correct, you'll get 1 point, up to a total maximum of 50 points per exam, 50 points for the midterm, 50 points for the final exam. As I've said already, the exam study guide on Canvas is available to you at the start of the semester. All of the questions and all the multiple choice responses for that exam, for both exams, are in that study guide. You are allowed to use that study guide while you read. This is not meant to trick you in any way. The goal is for you to, as you're doing the reading, understand and digest and comprehend key points from the subject matter. And so you can have that exam guide, you can have those questions in advance. You're able to print that out or digitally mark that up if you want. Right? The fact of the matter is, I want you to use the study guide to help inform your reading so that you know and understand key concepts from the reading. And so when the exam comes, right, you will then be also able to use that. So the answers to all of the questions are not available to you in advance, but obviously all of the questions and the multiple choice response options for everything, midterm and final exam included, are available in that study guide for you. Right. The way that the exam will work is that it's going to be electronic, and you will take both exams on Canvas via the quizzes section of Canvas. The one caveat is that due to randomization on the quizzes, the order of the multiple choice options that you will see are not going to necessarily be exactly the same as those on the study guide. The choices will not change at all, but the ordering of them will vary. But the questions will be the same questions in the same order you see them. It's just the answers will vary. The exam itself is OpenNote. It's open study guide. You can use your book while you're taking the exam. You can use the study guide. You're able to mark up and answer the questions as you're reading based off how you think the answer to the question should be responded to. You can have that with you, right? So when you get time to submit the exam, it's a lot more than potentially having to, or it should be a lot easier than having to sit down and take everything off the top of your head, because you should be able to come prepared and know what the answers are to the question, or at least what you think the answers are to those questions, and be able to sit down and move through it pretty quickly. In terms of logistics, so I've mentioned you will take this on the Canvas quizzes section. They are not available yet. You do not see them. If you look at this screenshot, you will see, right, something that looks like final exam on here. I see them because they don't open until specific dates for you. The midterm and the final exam will pop up at different times. Once it's available for you to take, you will then see a link that looks like that for you to be able to take those, but they are not available for you yet at this time. They will pop up when the time comes. The way that it works is you have 3-hour time limit to actually complete the exam. So once you start the exam, or the midterm or the final exam, The timer will begin. You have 3 hours or 180 minutes, however you want to think about it, to finish and submit all of your questions from the time it starts. Right? There is not an opportunity to pause the quiz once it starts. So when you do decide you want to sit down and then complete the exam, make sure that you have up to a maximum of 3 hours available to you without disruption to be able to submit everything. Now, obviously, because you have the study guide in advance, it shouldn't take you 3 hours because you're not necessarily having to answer all of the questions on the spot or look up each of the answers. If you have prepared and used the study guide, you should mostly just be entering the responses to the questions that you've already prepared on there. So in practical reality, most of the other students who've taken this before, they sit down, probably takes them no more than 30 minutes to an hour in total at most, because they already know what the answers or what they think the answers are, and they're really just going through the quiz to submit the answers to those based off of the prep work that they have already done. However, because I want you to have a little bit of flexibility, the way that it will work is you will see the actual exams will be open for about a 4 or 5 day period. So what that means is you will see something like on Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m., the midterm will become available. You then have any time between 3 p.m. Thursday when it opens until Sunday night at midnight to start it. So you have a 4 day period to kick off your 3 hour window, at which point, once you've begun it, you will then have 3 hours maximum to submit all your answers. So you don't necessarily have to have 3 hours available to you at the exact same time I have prescribed everybody to have to sit down and do it. You have some flexibility. There will be multiple day period by which you have to take both the midterm and final exam. But remember, once you choose to begin the exam to start submitting your answers to the quiz questions, at that point, the 3 hour timer begins, and you need to be able to finish before the end of the 3 hour timer. You won't be able to see the correct answers. You will be able to see how many questions you did and did not get correct at the end of the quiz, but all of the quiz question answers and the correct answers will release for everybody at the same time, a minute after the end of that multiple day period that everybody has to take the exam. So use the guides to help prepare. On the syllabus, you will notice here I mentioned exactly which chapters are covered. So not everything that you read is specific to this. On the midterm exam, chapters 1, 3, 8, 12, and 17 are the 5 chapters that are going to be asked about on that midterm exam. And then chapters 5, 6, 4, 7, and 9 from the Babby textbook are going to be the ones that are covered on the final exam. So there are already a couple additional chapters, like chapter 14 and 16, you'll read early in the semester. Those do not have associated reading questions for you, as do some of, I think, one of the chapters in the latter half of the semester, and all of the supplementary materials that you will read, the PDF documents that are outside of the Babby textbook. None of those are going to be covered. It's only going to be the 10 chapters from Babby and the questions that are in that exam study guide that is available to you. So that's how it works. Look to Canvas, because Canvas will tell you both the final due date, which is the absolute last day and time at which you have to submit either the midterm or the final exam, as well as it'll tell you when those are open. So you should hopefully be able to see the start dates. I will post those to make sure they are on Canvas for you so that you know the date and time at which you have the ability to begin the exam, at whichever point you then decide to start your 3 hour timer. So you won't see the actual ability to begin the quiz until that window starts, but you will at least know what day period it's going to be that you have the option to then begin it. And then once you begin it, you'll have the 3 hours to complete.